So, Villa versus Leeds has just ended. So it must be time for the look back. Didn't look back though, did I? There you are. There it is. Over there, look. Oh, it's good to be back. Of course, we had some international fixtures, so I'm sure you missed me last weekend. There was no Premier League action to talk about, so I didn't talk about any Premier League action. Of course, talking about internationals. World Cup-wise, I'll be covering the World Cup in detail as it comes around. I'm mainly focusing on England, of course, but yeah, lots of other little bits and pieces along with the World Cup to come soon, as soon as it starts. But let's focus on the Premier League then. There was lots of action this weekend. A North London derby, a Manchester derby, and the Conor Gallagher derby. I can barely say it. So exciting it was. We're going to go through all the games then in a little bit of detail, ask you guys a few questions as well. Of course, if you're fans of these clubs, get in touch, let me know what you're thinking. And it was an interesting weekend, except at Manchester City, where they've done the same thing again. We start then at the Etihad. And I warned you, I've been telling you for some time, that Erling Haaland guy can play, and boy, can he play. I tweeted it out. It's like a perfect striker has been formed, and they've put him into the perfect team, and da-da, there's Erling Haaland. For Premier League defences, it's looking impossible to deal with him. When you've got Kevin De Bruyne playing the type of balls that he's playing, how can that man be stopped? He's going to set records. He's going to break the record this year. Call it now. Is he... I mean, it's early to say this, but is he the best striker we've seen? Can you remember a player being this dominant in this fashion for some time? You compare his goal-scoring record to Messi and Ronaldo at the same stage of their career. Scary. Yes, he's played maybe at a slightly different side, and yeah, they started off as wingers, and he's predominantly been a striker, but the goal scoring record that he's producing is horrifying. There's talk this week that he's going to go around the world and do it all across Europe, basically. Every league he's going to go and dominate. He's already done the Bundesliga a little bit. He's obviously now doing the Premier League. He's only got a few more to tick off, but on the other hand, if you're Harry Kane, you're hoping, yeah, go quickly, get out of here immediately. It's a 6-3 win for City, but let's face it, it was done in the first half. 4-0 at that point. City looking rampant, Manchester United looking despondent. The decision for Ten Hag not to play Casemiro is the thing everyone's going to talk about. Why have you brought him in if you're not going to play him? We've seen many times that the Fred, McTominay, and then of course Eriksen in there as well. It never really worked. It takes me back to Brentford a little bit, where that obviously didn't work. You wonder why, and that's obviously going to be the question for Manchester United fans. There's been internationals this weekend. Maybe Ten Hag's been working on something very particular, but quite clearly it doesn't work. It's really difficult though, even when this is Manchester United, to judge a Manchester United performance against a City side this dominant and this rampant. And yes, 6-3 makes it look slightly closer than it frankly was, with a penalty late on. Great penalty, by the way, from Anthony Martial. That was something special. But the way in which City control games and dictate games is incredibly difficult to deal with. And on paper, people looked at Manchester United's lineup and the way in which they play and the style which they've adopted under Ten Hag, having seen him change his philosophy a little bit. And we expected so much more from a Man United side that seemingly play well on a counter-attack, right? But not in this game. City suffocate and just make it impossible for teams to, one, get out, and then when they can be so potent in attack. And people said City didn't need a striker. Well, they're probably thinking, could we have always done this? Who knows? Obviously, the big elephant in the room is that, is this the fault of Roy Keane? Erling Haaland said this week he'd never seen or talked to his dad about the foul that Keane put on to Haaland, his father. But I don't know, if I'm Erling, this sort of game meant a little bit more to me. And as the fantasy football connoisseur, I appreciate the points. So thank you, Haaland. Appreciate that. Thank you, Haaland. Should mention as well, didn't even mention his name, Phil Foden, a couple of goals for him in the game as well. I say a couple, 3, double hat-trick. Just unusual. I'm not used to it. Yeah, it looks like a player that Gareth Southgate should be getting more out of, but he doesn't have Haaland, De Bruyne, all of the ones, really, does he? So I can see why it doesn't quite work as well. Such a dominant performance from City. The first half especially was excellent, and they continue to continue. And unbelievable, really, they're not top of the league, because in North London, well, what on earth? Let's go back to the start of the weekend then, and it was a 12:30. Something didn't feel right about the 12:30 kickoff, but the game, fortunately, didn't disappoint. Thomas Partey with a lovely finish early on. Harry Kane's penalty gets them back in it, and then Tottenham slowly took over. And obviously, Arsenal slowly took over. Tottenham didn't take over anything other than the red card charts. The foul from Emerson Royale is absolutely baffling, and nearly as baffling as Conte's decision not to play a 3 in the middle. We saw it in the recent game when they made a change, right? They brought Basuma in to play alongside Bentancur and Højbjerg, and I don't know why he's not playing it. I don't know if there's this idea at Tottenham that we're going to play a 3, right? We've bought Kulusevski on pretty much on a permanent deal now. Richarlison's there as well. We have to use one of those two alongside Son and Kane to create a bit of balance, but actually the balance seems completely off. The press is really bad from Tottenham. I've mentioned this in previous videos and I'm going to keep mentioning it and keep looking out for it, folks, if you're watching at home. The attacking 3 do not press effectively. Kane drops in at times and does a little bit more of it, but it leaves Son and Richarlison as passengers in the game, and we've only seen Son really flourish this season. He's not had a great year until his hat-trick. It must be mentioned, like, he's not been fantastic. When he was playing sort of in the way that he was in previous seasons, off Harry Kane a little bit more, giving a little bit more license, giving a bit more freedom, and you get that from having a more solidified central midfield 3. I don't know if Conte is going to decide to go back to it, and it's easy to say when they don't win the game, but it seems obvious against an Arsenal side that run midfields at the moment, right? And that was the bit that was strange for me. Dominant again with Gabriel and Saliba, really, really good at the back. And overall, Arsenal just look like a really well-together machine, especially in forward areas. You've only got to look at the performances of Gabriel Jesus. He looks phenomenal. But the man I want to talk about, and we talked about in a recent episode, again, I'm so pleased that I've referenced these players. They continue to play well. Granit Xhaka will now start to get a few more plaudits because he's got his goal. People now will start to go, oh yeah, he is playing well, isn't he? And then right now he's in team of the year for me. Like there's players in there, like De Bruyne's probably in there and a couple of others. But for me, Granit Xhaka would have to be in there. He's sort of been reimagined by Mikel Arteta. For whatever reason, his performances just get better and better. He's playing a slightly more advanced role now. He's not given as much defensive responsibility. He just sort of plays as like a floating 10 almost, to give it football manager terminology. He plays as like a roaming playmaker, but with so much license to kind of do whatever he wants. And not only is he doing whatever he wants, he's doing it really effectively. Deserves a lot of credit for that, but not as much as Mikel Arteta, because many managers, and this should be talked about, many managers would have been done with Xhaka, gone out the door, right? We saw the way he dealt with Aubameyang, and Xhaka has been through similar things, but on the pitch with Arsenal fans. We've seen the way he'd been substituted before. The reaction wasn't good. Many managers would have gone, do you know what? It's not for me. And Arteta didn't do that. Put an arm around him a little bit and said, look, you're Granit Xhaka. Let's see a bit more. Let's see the player that Arsenal thought they bought all those years ago. And now we're getting it. And now it seems to be of benefit to both parties. So really, really good from Arsenal. Once again, they stay top of the league, deservedly so. For Tottenham, there's lots more questions than answers for them at the moment. They've got to kind of fix it. Arsenal fans, can you win the league? Tottenham fans, you're starting to worry that it's not quite clicking as you'd expected. I'm interested. We go to Bournemouth versus Brentford. It was 0-0, but something to talk about in this game was two things really, because we've focused on one of them quite a lot in these videos. But the first one is that Bournemouth are 4 games without defeat. I know. Can you quite believe it? Played Solanke and more up front in this game. For the first time, we're still seeing Bournemouth play quite conservative football. They're not really expressive with how they play. But when you're not scoring goals, and that's one of the problems, right? They don't score enough goals. But when you're not scoring, the one thing you have to do in the Premier League is stay sharp at the back and not concede at any sort of rate, really. And Bournemouth are doing that brilliantly. They're not conceding at all. They're really doing well at keeping clean sheets. On the other side, for Brentford, went back to the 4-3-3, a formation I think they've only lost once with so far this year, aside from playing that sort of 3-5-2 system used against Arsenal, really disappointingly, but against Manchester United really successfully. The 4-3-3 is sort of what they're known for. They went back to it. And if you're a Brentford fan, if you're a Brentford player, you're looking at Bournemouth, and despite their good start to the season, sort of their under-the-radar good start to the season, you're expecting a little bit more. Tony probably should have scored as well. It's one of those games, like, we're having lots of these in the Premier League right now, where two teams, and this is going to be a theme for today a little bit, two teams here are probably quite happy with a point, especially when so many of the teams around them appear to be crumbling, losing games when they shouldn't be, and causing themselves more issues. These are two teams a lot of people thought Brentford, second season syndrome, might be a bit of a problem. Bournemouth coming up didn't quite look strong enough. But again, picking up points, we talked about it before, right? Keeping the momentum going, keeping it moving forward. It's a really positive sign for both of them. And they allow themselves now still a real good surface to build off of. We move on. It was the Conor Gallagher derby, and I said it correctly this time, so I'm pleased with that. It's his goal as well. Like we could talk about the goals from Edouard and Aubameyang. We can talk about Chelsea under Potter not quite being at it. It does make, like, early doors, obviously. It makes the decision to sack Thomas Tuchel seem a little bit weird. In that, would Chelsea be playing any differently with him right now than as they are with Graham Potter against similar styles? Probably not. Like, this is kind of what you'd expect, but a really good win for them. Aubameyang's finish is superb. And the Gallagher finish is outrageous. Christian Pulisic, what an assist. Maybe not. I might be watching an American broadcaster. They were happy he came on. But yeah, Conor Gallagher, lovely finish. Didn't celebrate. How do we feel about that? That makes me feel two kind of way. Well, on one level, lovely respect from a young lad. On the second, he's a screamer. You got to celebrate a screamer. But there is something with Chelsea that they feel like they've got away with this a little bit. Like, it seems so surface level. I don't quite think they're trying hard enough for whatever reason. Or it's just not, maybe it's just not clicking. There's maybe a lack of understanding of what Potter wants or what Tuchel wanted even. And that sort of is then meaning the togetherness isn't quite there in the squad, at least on the pitch. Like, I don't know if it's off the pitch. I watched them get their FIFA ratings. They all seemed very pally. But on the pitch, there doesn't quite seem to be that synergy. And there's a few teams in the league that still have that. Still early in the year, by all accounts. Again, before the World Cup, it's tricky as well. How many players are giving everything, knowing that if they go a little bit too all in, you might miss yourself an international tournament, and they don't come around all that often. So I can understand a few players like Mason Mount, maybe not quite giving it everything. God, blimey. For Palace, it's an okay performance, but it's a performance that, again, there needs to be a little bit more from them. And Patrick Vieira maybe could have done a little bit more to influence this game a little bit. With the way that Chelsea were playing, it was a little bit stagnant. It took a wonder goal to break through. I just feel like, basically, I watched Southampton beat Chelsea and do so by playing better, frankly, and giving a little bit more. And there's this cutting edge that is just lacking a little bit for Crystal Palace. And Wilfried Zaha, when it's not him, there is this kind of question of, well, who's going to be the real X factor? Yeah, Edouard gets the goal, but it's not like he's ripping them apart like constantly and being a constant threat. And Southampton did that against Chelsea really, really well. And as I've just mentioned, Chelsea don't seem that different to the team that Southampton beat. So it was maybe there for Palace a little bit, but it hasn't quite come off. A good win for Chelsea. They need it. Graham Potter especially. For Palace, it's going to feel like one that got away a little bit. Probably felt they deserved a point. I mean, that's the bit that sucks. Fulham 1, Newcastle United 4. And this was such a big win for Newcastle. Under the radar win for Newcastle, really. Because if they don't win this, suddenly we're looking at a completely different story of Newcastle's season. They've only won one game before this match. And that if they don't win this one, suddenly you're 1 win from 8. But actually, win it, and I think you've lost 1 in 8. And it look the narrative of the season looks totally different now. Again, got that great point against City as well. Some other good draws in there as well. Drew with Brighton, which I think people again now look at and go, not a bad point at all. It's just a good performance from a side that know how to beat 10 men quite comfortably, it's fair to say. And I'm talking about Chelsea and their lack of togetherness. Well, Newcastle do not have that problem. And when you look across this Newcastle team, it really does show you that it only takes a couple of players and a manager that's able to bring a squad together to actually produce something really quite enjoyable to watch. And Newcastle fans have always been a little bit blood and thunder, and again in recent years have been a little bit depressing, it has to be said, under Bruce. But now under Eddie Howe, there's a real... the identity of Newcastle is they will give everything, and they might not always win, but they're going to give everything, and that's mainly all you can ask as a fan sometimes. And I think as a Newcastle fan with a transitional period that they're quite clearly in, it's really exciting to see that be the thing that's at the forefront of how they play at the moment, as well as the Almiron banger. Right, that's such a great goal. Again, if you've not checked it out, please go and watch it. It's just a really solid performance from Newcastle. And yeah, we can talk about the fact that Fulham had 10 men and took Mitrovic off after 36 minutes. And you wonder whether that could have impacted things a little bit. But ultimately, again, a really good job from Newcastle. The tackle from Chalobah, it's late. There's a little bit too much force in it. You can't really have complaints. And I do feel like you see this with newly promoted sides sometimes. As much as Fulham have been good this year, as soon as they go down to 10 men, it's a long time to have to hold on. And it was almost like they felt that. They were like, oh God, this is going to go on forever. And Newcastle took full advantage and actually looked like a team that maybe could have scored even more. The momentum they've picked up from those draws have meant they've not been set back too often, and it carries it into a game like this, and they get their just rewards. It's a really good win. And Newcastle now look like they might be on their way a little bit. Liverpool 3, Brighton 3. Now, I'll make no secret of the fact I'm a Liverpool fan. In the first 5 minutes, first 20 minutes, 10 minutes, the first part of the first half, I was a Brighton fan because, my God, some of the football they were playing, it was embarrassing to support Liverpool in that small period of time. Absolutely dominant. It could have been 4-0. 10 minutes in, it was so dominant, it could have been 4-0 before Liverpool even have a shot on target, it feels like. And ultimately, if you're Brighton, you probably feel like you could have and should have won this. They gave it away a little bit, and at 2-0, It was all quite comfortable. And there was this sense, as soon as Bobby scores the first one for Liverpool and they fight back and gets his second, and then the Webster own goal, and it's suddenly 3-2, and Brighton think, oh, this is typical of an away game at Anfield. And then Trossard bags his third and completes his hat-trick, and everything seems to change. For Brighton, it seems like the job is just being carried on over there so successfully. And that's what they're looking for, the consistency of changing a manager and getting a new one in and continuing to play the way in which they are doing. It's perfect. And if you're the Brighton board, you deserve credit for allowing a manager to come in, or finding a manager to come in and do really, really similar things. That's a real positive. On the reverse of it, you've let a 2-0 lead slip a little bit, and again, played some really good football. For Liverpool, where do you start? Ultimately, and I'll bring the graphic up, Trent is gone from, but it's getting hard to defend Trent, basically, and he's not defending himself. So they are attacking that side. Every team has decided that whether he is the weak point, and I think that's probably an important distinction to make, in that I don't think he's the problem, but I think that space that he leaves is the problem. Klopp talked in the week about the fact that he wasn't playing for England, and that Liverpool play in a set kind of way, and I've talked about this a little bit, right? Liverpool play in a set way where Trent is one of the main creators in the side, and what he offers offensively is so much more important to Liverpool than what they offer him defensively. And the responsibility of the central midfielder, or the defensive midfielder, or the centre-back to cover for Trent is crucial. But when he's not doing the basics, and when he's been exploited in the way that teams are giving him so much more to do defensively, he's getting a little bit unstuck, and he becomes lethargic, and as a result looks lazy. And then that's when you've got a real problem, because then you've got a player devoid of confidence, and then anything he does going forwards is impacted by the fact that he's knowing that if he gives it away or he makes a mistake, he's going to have to rush back and be exploited defensively. And that's the bind Liverpool have got now with Trent, and it's really, really uncomfortable. Some other players across the pitch haven't been particularly good so far this year. I think Fabinho maybe has got away with it a little bit, as has Van Dijk, as talked about before. And offensively, it's funny, right? He's got an assist in this game, but Mo Salah's just not on it. It's just not clicking. Even with Henderson back in that right-sided spot, which I'd prefer him to be in, it just didn't click for Liverpool in a game like this. Luis Diaz came on and looked like the brightest spark for Liverpool once again. Firmino getting 2 goals almost feels unexpected. Darwin Núñez came on very late, and again, I thought the chaos bottom was going to be pressed earlier, but no, not to be. For Liverpool, they are level on points with a team in our next game, and that says everything. It was Southampton 1, Everton 2. Both teams on 11 points in Merseyside, but Everton will definitely be the happier, and Lampard, togetherness. It's a word and a phrase I'm going to use today. He's really building upon things that he's done in previous teams, and at Chelsea in that first year he kind of had that, and we saw it in a derby, he had that as well. And there was question marks of, well, was he going to be able to do it at Everton? It was hard last year. The situation they're in made it incredibly difficult, but now there's a real tempo and a rhythm about Everton, and suddenly from a team that looked like they were struggling but were picking up draws along the way and were finding themselves hard to beat, now find themselves mid-table, probably where they'd have expected to be at this point in the season, hoping that it would be like this, especially without Dominic Calvert-Lewin. Like, it makes it all that more impressive for me. Ultimately, and I've said that word a few times, if you're Everton, this is kind of where you want to be now, going to places like Southampton and getting wins and being where the expectation levels, I think, sort of sit Everton at the moment, and being mid-table for them come the end of the season will be a huge plus point. For Southampton, I mentioned it in the last look back, I'm worried now. If you lose to Everton, the next set of games, the next run that you're coming to, that scares me a little bit, because if you're not winning those games, you go into a World Cup and you might even find yourself, so if you look at the league table, they will be in the relegation zone if it carries on like this, and they are fortunate really that Leicester and Wolves really haven't hit the ground running. Southampton have had I mentioned the Chelsea game before, right? They've had some really good performances against the likes of Chelsea and looked really good, and they always play with a decent, like the style of play is really like pleasing on the eye. They're just another side that is really lacking a cutting edge, a final third moment of brilliance, and it just doesn't seem to come. So hopefully they can get that going soon. Aribo gets his goal again, and they've had other chances in the game. It's not like they've been blown away. They're just not winning in crucial points, and that speaks a little bit. There was a lot made of the signings this season, and the fact it's a young side. And is that now becoming a bit of a reality? They're not a team that yet know how to win. And that's on Hasenhüttl, who has to be the man to make it happen. I was talking to a Saints fan earlier today who said, like, you see Lampard, he's on the touchline, he's giving players that little bit extra. And Hasenhüttl sort of sat back, questioning maybe like what's going on, and maybe you want to see a bit more from him. And young players maybe need that G up a little bit, and he's not giving it from the sideline as much as he could. Those sort of intangibles that happen in football are really important, and it's on a manager like Hasenhüttl to get the best out of those boys that need that little bit extra. Ultimately, again, it's a really worrying defeat for Southampton. The goals, the first goal, like the header back across, is just really poor defending, and the second one, the goalkeeper has a ball blasted at him from Dwight McNeil, and in it goes. Little mention for Connor Cody, gets that first goal, and again, his influence on that Everton team, it was a bit of a memey transfer. People were a bit like, well, why is he going there? It doesn't seem like the right move. He's not been particularly good for England when he's played, and people questioning that call up. But you can see it on the pitch, like he's giving every player, as much as Lampard is sort of the general on the sideline, it's Cody on the pitch, and Everton have really lacked that, I think, in the last couple of years, and it's giving them that extra boost. Someone who's willing to hold players to account. I think that's really important, and Everton seem much better off for it. So pleasing signs. Again, the fact they can say they're level on points with Liverpool, they'd have taken that after 8 games, I'd imagine, even if maybe not quite in the circumstances that it's occurred, but still really, really good from them. And Iwobi, another assist. He's looked good this year. West Ham 2, Wolves 0, and people were calling it El Sacchio, weren't they? They thought Bruno Lange and Moyes were, is it Lange? Bruno Lange? And Moyes were both at risk in this game, and the loser would be under real pressure. Well, one manager has gone. Bruno Lange has been sacked, and Sean Dyche, the replacement. Wolves don't score. What do you want me to say? Wolves don't score goals. Traditionally, in seasons gone by, they don't score goals. And in games which appear quite tight for long periods, this is the sort of game you're always going to lose against a West Ham side that finally maybe have decided that Scamacca is the guy. I fully expect Antonio to start again next week. I don't know, they seem to chop and change that decision quite a lot. Moyes needs to find some consistency with it. And I'll tell you what, if Scamacca scores goals like he did this weekend, you'll probably see it again. Really good performance from Jared Bowen as well. He gets his goal, of course, and hurts his finger. That picture's horrifying. Don't Google it. It's awful. Don't put it in the video, Chris. And for West Ham, it's now a process of, okay, right, we've got ourselves a win. Another manager's been sacked. Let's take this and move forward. Let's build some momentum, and that's crucial for them now. They have to do that. It's going to be a difficult season for West Ham. As long with the World Cup being slammed in the middle, they've got all those European games. We've talked about it before. If they can find some rhythm, and West Ham are a team that have lost games where draws would have been so much more beneficial to them. I think mentally would have been far better for them. They're a team that need to now build upon this if they can do. For Wolves, I don't really know what happens. They're jumping first, which I think is interesting. In the teams in the relegation fight right now, it's them, Nottingham Forest, and Leicester City. Now, Cooper and Rodgers, there's a lot of talk that it won't continue to last, and they play, of course, tonight as you watch this. I think, based on what I've seen so far, I think like a 2-2 draw feels really, really likely. Again, tweet me if I'm right / wrong about that. But yeah, they're the first ones to move. And is the race for Sean Dyche on? I don't know. A man that was sending Burnley down last year. You might have argued he'd have done slightly better towards the end of the season, but it wasn't looking good. Is he the man that's going to come in and rescue it? I don't know how good his Portuguese is. I guess that's going to be a big factor for them. Really, for Wolves, it's got to happen soon, it feels like. And I'm not sure that signing Diego Costa now seems that smart. They were pretty desperate. What can you say? But they're boring, they're ineffective, they're rubbish. So I can see why it's happened. Wolves fans, what do you think? You said you were worried. Do you feel more confident or less confident now? And to round things off then, we go to Ellen Road, our final game of the weekend. Leeds 0, Aston Villa 0. I've just watched it just like moments ago before recording this actually. And Leeds have held on for a point tremendously well. I dare say they didn't necessarily, well, I say they didn't deserve it. Villa didn't do enough to win it. So there's that side of it as well. They've clung on, right? Yes, there's the red card in there as well. Stupid, daft, like you put yourselves under so much pressure late on. But as much as I've talked about this a lot in this video, that draws can be important, they can be momentum builders, but actually for Leeds, that's what it is for them. For Villa, what a missed opportunity. Goodness me, not just in terms of the chances they missed, but in terms of the opportunity was there for another away win. They've thrown it away. We could talk about, there's not much to say about Leeds really. It was just a defensive performance that they clung on, but did so quite well. They weren't very happy with the referee, who actually thought had a pretty tough game in what was quite a chaotic match between two rival sides. There was a little bit in pre-season that boiled over, as well as the situation with the goal in the Championship a few years ago. For Villa, There's no attacking fluidity whatsoever with what they do, whether they're Leon Bailey or Coutinho or Buendia or Watkins or Ings. Like, all of them played in this game at some point. They all make straightforward runs. No one's thinking slightly smarter. Everything is played into channels. No one cuts across one another. As a defensive unit for Leeds, like, you want to give them credit, but it was quite easy. You want to see a little bit more guile from Villa, and that seems to be the thing they're lacking. It was interesting, right? Kamara's injured. Diego Carlos is injured as well. So Douglas Luiz came back in, a familiar face of previous seasons, in that defensive midfield role. Villa now without two of the big signings of their summer. Maybe that will help them, ironically enough, a little bit, but it's that forward area that still needs work. And I don't think Gerrard knows which his best 2 or 3 is, or 4 maybe at times as well. He needs to find the blend between Coutinho and Buendia and Ings and Watkins, and then you've got Leon Bailey. And it feels like they're missing one of the other almost. They need a striker different to Ings and Watkins. They need a winger maybe similar to Bailey but on the other side of the pitch, so their formulation of attacks isn't quite so predictable, and that maybe is a bit of an issue for Villa at the moment, and more so for Steven Gerrard, who remains under pressure, it has to be said. And there we are. That's the weekend's action. That's the look back. I've flown through this. One of my best presenting performances. I should put myself top of the list of, what do we call this? It's been the international breaks ruined me. I think it's just winners and losers of the week. So let's start with our losers of the week. Third on the list, and this is controversial. This is the first time I've done this. The player that scored is going on. Gerard Bowen's hand, not the person. Just his hand. I'm going to need an update on that finger. It bends all out. It's horrible. It's awful. I shouldn't be bringing it up, really. Anyway, second on the list, Southampton. I'm worried, boys. This can't keep going on now. Like, the joke's gone too far. This is basically they're on the slide and they've got one arm and they're hanging on to not the look back, the slide, and they're slipping. And I'm worried for them. They're on my losers of the week at a home game against an Everton team that still appear beatable. Worrying. And Bruno Lange, obviously, get him gone. He can't be on this list again. That's the only compliment I can give him. On the reverse of this, the third winner of the week it's got to be Trossard. It's a hat-trick away at Anfield. I don't care if Liverpool score 7. It's a hat-trick away at Anfield. It's a stunning performance from him in particular. He's continuing the good work of Graham Potter single-handedly at the moment. I look forward to seeing him move to Chelsea for 50 million quid, either in January or the summer. Book it. Second on the list, we've got to give it to Everton. As much as I think Southampton have had a poor time of it there, Everton's resurgence under Frank Lampard, I'm going to give everyone connected with Everton Football Club the credit, really, right here. That's so deserved. You could argue that this is a surprise based on how they started the season, but you know what, they could be here again soon. That's what worries me as a Liverpool fan. Top of the list, it's that Norwegian. No, not Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. Erling Haaland is our winner of the week. He's the best. He's the most impactful striker. That's better. I think I've ever seen in the Premier League. And I'm old. And that concludes the look back then. If you've enjoyed it, do leave a like on the video. It really does help out the channel. If you can do that for me, it costs you nothing, but it helps me out a lot. And leave a comment if your team is included in this. Let me know your thoughts as we look forward to next week's action to come again. These are out, of course, every single Monday, so make sure you subscribe if you want more. And of course, if you're here for Football Manager, that's all coming again, back around soon. But these videos will continue despite Football Manager. And when the World Cup comes, there'll be World Cup focus all over your faces. Right, take care soon. Take care soon. Take care now, and I'll see you soon. Goodbye. The look back. He's back.